Let's get going. My job in the next 30 minutes is to give you a sense of how fast the world is changing and how amazing the world is becoming. I want you to walk away here with the absolute confidence that you can make your biggest dreams come true, and that the world that we're creating is a world that is more prosperous, ultimately more peaceful, and ultimately the world that you desire for you and your kids. Right? I am so sick and tired of what I call the crisis news network, the constantly negative news network, this barrage of negative news that changes our mindset. So my goal here is a dosage of mindset for you to reset. You with me? Okay? All right. So here's the challenge. The 100 billion neurons in our brain, the 100 trillion synaptic connections in our brain, evolved on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. And back then, the world was local and linear. And our brains evolved for this local and linear world, right? But today, the world is anything but that. Today, the world is global and exponential. Things are not changing millennium to millennium or century to century or decade to decade. They are changing year to year. And so if you were to graph that, it looks like this. This red line is all of us. It's our employees, our parents, our politicians, our friends, our customers. We have not had a hardware or software upgrade in 2 million years, literally, when our prefrontal cortex came into larger folds. This yellow line is the work that I do. I've had the pleasure of starting 19 companies really focused on exponential technologies. This is computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, blockchain, AR, VR, all of these technologies doubling in power every 12 to 24 months. And the difference between these two is your choice. It's either disruptive opportunity, if you're willing to take advantage of these technologies and use them, or it's disruptive stress, if you're trying to be resistant. Listen, the only constant is change, and the rate of change is accelerating. So when I talk about exponentials, and this is a photograph of Singularity University, I'm proud to be the co-founder with Ray Kurzweil and the executive chairman. What does exponential growth mean? So all of us are linear thinkers. I can tell you in 5 steps I'll be there, in 20 there, in 30 I'll be at the cameraman in the middle of the room here. In 30 steps, I'm 30 meters away. And we, as humans, we think in this linear fashion. In fact, we tend to take the past and project it into the future. That's what we do. That's the way our brains are wired to think. But the world we're in today is an exponential one, where an exponential is a simple doubling. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on. And in 30 doublings, I'm not in the middle of the room here. In 30 doublings, I'm 1 billion meters away. Right? Put differently, I've gone 26 times around planet Earth. And that difference between 30 meters out or circumnavigating the planet 26 times is the challenge. And it's what can provide extraordinary opportunity to fuel your grandest moonshots. And Dave is right, I love working with entrepreneurs to say, go bigger, think bigger. You can. There is no limitation. There really is not. We're living in a world today where any one of you have access to the world's information on Google, right? More information than President Clinton had when he was the president. Any one of you can spin up 1,000 processor cores on AWS, on Amazon's web. Any one of you have access to as much capital. We're living in a world that is swimming in capital. Seed, angel, venture, crowdfunding, even sovereign wealth funds are coming in and beginning to back entrepreneurs. So the question is, what's your limitation? And for me, what's typically the limitation of almost all entrepreneurs is A, you're not clear about what your massively transformative purpose is, which is what you wake up each day with as a mission and a purpose in life that allows you to decide, no, I'm not doing this, I'm going to focus on this. And then what's your moonshot? Where are you going 10 times bigger in your life, in your business, in your desires, while the rest of the world is going 10% bigger? Now, a lot of this exponential growth is fueled by what's called Moore's Law. This guy is Gordon Moore. He's one of the founders of Intel. And in 1958, he co-founds it. And by 1965, he notices something. He says, we've noticed at Intel that the number of transistors we can put on a piece of silicon has roughly doubled every 12 to 18 months. And he publishes these findings, but then he says something else. He goes, it's likely to continue. And that doubling, that price performance doubling, has continued for 50 years. And it's become known as Moore's Law. Let me show you what this looks like. I want you to have a visual image of why the world is accelerating. Right? This is the first integrated circuit. It's 2 transistors, a horizontal and a vertical one. This is Intel's first commercial product, the Intel 4004, 2300 transistors, about $1 each. Let's fast forward 45 years. This is Intel's Core i7 processor, 14.4 billion transistors, less than a millionth of a penny each, right? A 330 billion-fold price performance increase. By the way, I'm going to give you a chance to download all these slides at the end, take as many photos as you want, but you can also download them and share them openly. That's amazing, right? This is what gives you, the ability to send a megabyte file at 38,000 feet. Let me give you another visualization. Back in 1956, this was a 5 megabyte hard drive for $120,000. And if you happen to have your cargo airplane, you could move it from location to location. Fast forward, 2005, new form factor, an SD card, right? 128 megabytes, 25 times more memory, but it's 1,000 times cheaper. Holy shit, right? It doesn't stop here. Fast forward, now it's 128 gigabytes for the same price, 99 bucks. Right on schedule on Moore's Law. But does it stop here? No, of course not, right? Today, it's a terabyte on an SD card. A terabyte on an SD card, right? I mean, it's one of these things you lose in your pocket, you can't find it. Ray Kurzweil and I are investors and advisors to a company that's working on putting all of Google's data centers on a sugar cube. Right, so at Abundance 360 this year, we're going into a deep dive in nanotechnology, in brain-computer interface, and AI, and how those 3 things are coming together to completely transform our lives in the next 10 to 15 years. The challenge is when I'm just so blessed to have an amazing cadre of investors and friends and partners and business partners. You're going to be hearing from one of them next, one of my co-founders of many efforts, one of my board members at Singularity University. We haven't announced who it is yet, have we? Okay, but I will in a little bit. And I have, there's Sony Mordecai, one of my innovation board members at XPRIZE. Sony, good to see you this morning, pal. Anyway, the conversation I have with a lot of people in the Valley is that people have no idea how fast things are changing, right? And they really are. I'll hit on that in a little bit. This is from Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, 1900 to 2010, plotted on a log scale. How much computation can $1,000 buy you? And what we see here is that even on the log scale, it's curving up. The first derivative is positive. The rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. And it's going to continue. And when it does, what you get is this. In 2023, what is that, 6 years from now, $1,000 buys you the computational power of the human brain, 10 to the 16 cycles per second. Fast forward 25 years, and now $1,000 buys you the computational power of the entire human race. Now it gets fun. So one of the realizations I had is that faster, cheaper computers are driving all of these technologies. And we're creating new business models. I want to share with you the stuff I'm most excited about, the implications of exponentials. This is where I live my life, and this is where I coach entrepreneurs, what I teach at Singularity University, what I teach through Abundance Digital, is how every single industry is going to change. Right? So in transportation, the autonomous car is coming, right? We know that. You guys all know the autonomous car is coming. How fast is it coming? Here's one of the first cars that Larry, Sergey, and Eric in the photo are working on. Let's go back in time. This is 1904 on the streets of New York. And if you look at this photograph, what you'll see is two automobiles. 10% of the cars are automobiles in 1904. Fast forward to 1917. Here we are, the streets of New York. Horse and buggy, gone. Gone. When did this happen? So in 1908, the Model T car came online, the first mass production car. By 1912, we reached the tipping point, 4 years later. Right? That's how fast a technology can disappear, and always does. Old technologies fall off cliffs, exponentials explode. I can talk about this, and usually do, for 2 or 3 days straight. Sorry, Dave, I'm not stopping in 20 minutes. Okay. So this is Uber's autonomous car. Jeff Holden, who is the chief product officer at Uber, one of my dear friends, and he's part of the A360 community. And we're on stage last year, we were talking about autonomous cars. I said, when, Jeff, when? So within the next 2 years, we're going to see those autonomous cars coming online. But it's not just autonomous cars. These are autonomous electric cars. And these cars, by every major car company, are going to be 5 to 10 times cheaper than you owning a car. And when something is 5 to 10 times cheaper, you switch. You're going to park your car, part your car, sell your car, get rid of your car, because your autonomous electric Uber or Lyft or whatever it might be, right? And Tesla, I've got a Model S, a Model X. I love those vehicles. They've got 8 cameras, 12 ultrasonic sensors, and they're feeding an NVIDIA supercomputer. These cars are going to be far safer. My 6-year-old boys will never drive. Guarantee you that. You know, Waymo, which is Google's spin-out, I really have to talk to them about how they name their companies. But every major car company is saying, we no longer sell cars, we're a mobility company now. We sell car as a service. And so the predictions are that car ownership will be dead by 2025. How does that change you, right? If you're in the parking lot business, sell your parking lots now. If you're in the car insurance business, you're fucked. A lot of change coming. By the way, if you're in an electric autonomous car, there's no speeding tickets and no parking tickets. Cities are going to have difficulties with their revenues. We'll come back to that. It's not just cars, right? Larry Page, who I'm honored to have on my board at the X Prize, he's an investor in many of my companies, including Planetary Resources. He's focused on flying cars. He's backed and invested in 2 of these. But it's not just him. Airbus, one of the largest manufacturers in the country, are working on deployment in this year, right? And then I mentioned Jeff Holden. He's the head of Uber Elevate, right? So we're going to start flying. So I would have loved, I live in Santa Monica, you know, it would have been great to just hop in an Uber Elevate and sort of go up, you know, 1,000 feet and zoom down at 200 miles an hour. It's going to change real estate, where you live versus where you work. So I'm also very proud to be a founding board member of Hyperloop One. Now it's Virgin Hyperloop One, right? Very cool. And we are rocking it, right? So here's the first Hyperloop pod. And look at these facilities, right? I fly from Santa Monica Airport. I'm a pilot out to Las Vegas, where we have this test track going. We're hitting like 300 kilometers per hour, on our way to 1,200 kilometers per hour. Right? It's going to reset up how we think of where we live, right? You can live 200 miles away and commute in the morning to work in 15 minutes, right? I mean, this is the future that we have, disintermediating where you live, where you work, let alone VR and then avatar. More on that sometime soon. All right, so we're about to enter this massively hyper-connected world. One of the most important things I can talk to you about. Check this out. In the next 2 years, 5G is coming online, right? So what that means is that this device that you carry around, can I ask a question here? I've been doing this for the last like 20 talks. Who here does not have a cell phone with them? We have one. You've ruined my record. Did you leave it home on purpose? Stolen, okay. All right, I'm not gonna, but you would have had it with you, right? So like in 20,000 people, I've run into like a couple of people on their cell phone. This is an extension of our neocortex. So these devices are about to go to 10 to 100 gigabit speeds, the equivalency of 1 million phone calls. Extraordinary, right? But it's not just this, right? It's Zuck is going up with drones and satellites, Google with balloons and satellites, Richard Branson, Paul Jacobs, Greg Weiler with $1.2 billion of funding from NASA at SoftBank, a 900 satellite constellation, and then SpaceX with 4,000 satellites. We're about to connect the entire world. Oh my God, and they're connecting, not like you and I did at 9600 baud. They're connecting at gigabit speeds. So what does that look like? 2010, 1.8 billion people connected online. Today it's 3.8. In the next 6-7 years, 8 billion people. 8 billion people connected. So it's literally 4.2 billion new minds. 4.2 billion people who've never bought anything, uploaded, downloaded anything. 4.2 billion new customers. If you're in the business and you're an entrepreneur, what I teach my entrepreneurs in my Abundance Digital platform is, guys, biggest marketplace ever in the world, coming online, no one's ready for. Let me guarantee you one thing. 4.2 billion people coming on with a smartphone, not going to go to a bank, not going to buy insurance from a broker. We're heading towards a completely digitized world, right? So what are they going to discover? What are they going to invent? What are they going to desire? Tens of trillions of dollars flowing into the global economy. Big heads up, this is a big deal. All right. Health and longevity, implications of exponentials. My company, Human Longevity, I'll introduce it in one slide. We're the largest genome sequencing facility in the world. We don't sequence like 23andMe. We sequence all 3.2 billion letters of your life 30 or 40 times over and over again to get the highest resolution we can. And we're making amazing discoveries because we sequence the entire genome. And we're discovering in part, you talk about the exome, the 2% that code for your proteins, the other 98% is not junk DNA. And we're discovering, look, a change here means you don't live over 65. You have these genomes, you're living over 100, right? So we're beginning to discover the actual fundamental software of life. I've had the chance, so I'm committed and convinced to extreme longevity. Right? When I was in medical school many, many years ago, I watched this TV show. I was looking at extreme-lived life forms in the ocean. Whales, turtles, sharks that could live 4, 5, 6, potentially 700 years. And I'm doing my joint medical degree and my engineering degrees, and I'm saying, if they can live that long, why can't I? And I said, clearly it's a software or hardware problem. In other words, it's solvable. And I think we're going to be solving it. I was with Ray Kurzweil on Friday. We were doing a webinar for our community. Anybody here see that webinar on Friday, out of curiosity? Anybody here? Okay, well, anyway, we're talking about the notion that we're about to reach longevity escape velocity. That moment in time where for every year you live, science is extending your life for more than another year, right? So my goal right now is, how do I make 100 years old the new 60? Right? How do we add 30 to 40 healthy years on everyone's life so that you live long enough to live forever? This is what I believe we're going to be able to do. So I built 3 companies, Human Longevity in partnership with Craig Venter, who sequenced the first human genome, and then Cellularity is a stem cell company. We use placental stem cells, more on that sometime in the future. But what we're doing at Human Longevity is we're sequencing your genome, your microbiome, your metabolome. We do full body MRI, coronary CT, all the phenotypic data. We feed that into our machine learning database. And our job is to determine, is there anything going on in you right now? Right? But imagine if every year we digitize you 150 gigabytes of data every year to say you're clean, nothing going on. If there's something going on, fix it right now. And then based upon your genome and based upon the work you're going to hear about from Viome and your RNA, what are you likely to die from? And fix it or look for it, right? So on the verge of extraordinary human longevity, don't screw up and die from something stupid in the interim. That's my advice. We are bringing CRISPR online right now, right? You guys have read about this, curing the first genetic disease, beta thalassemia. So literally, we're going from evolution by natural selection to evolution by human intelligent direction, at least hopefully intelligent. We are engineering T cells and literally bringing remission rates on many cancers down to as high as 94%. Right? Cancer is within our crosshairs. I love this. This is work being done at Salk. On the left are skin cells from an aging human skin cells. On the right are young skin cells. And if you were to produce this in a person's hand, this is what it would look like. Right? Now, I want you to read this. So researchers at Salk were able to turn adult cells back into embryonic-like ones in aging mice, actually in the mouse, and in vitro human cells, extending the life of a mouse. Human trials in the next 10 years. And this is from the principal author, a friend of mine, Dr. Belmonte. He says, aging is a plastic process, more amenable to therapeutic interventions than we previously thought. People are beginning to think of aging as a disease, not an inevitability, right? Amazing, amazing stuff going on. We just, at the X Prize Foundation, awarded the Tricorder X Prize. Super cool. We are getting ready to step up, and we'll be announcing in the months ahead a massive Cancer X Prize for early detection. And we just greenlit at X Prize Visioneering an Alzheimer's X Prize, right? Because living to 90, 100, 120 is meaningless unless you have your cognition, your aesthetics, and your mobility, right? We need all of those things. Thank you. So in the last few minutes, I want to give you a sense of the extraordinary world we're living in. I want to give you an antidote to the negative mindset out there. So I've had a chance to write 2 books I'm very proud of, Abundance and Bold. Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. I was the closing speaker at the Clinton Global Initiative. It was one of President Clinton's favorite books. And as he's reading the book and quoting from it, introducing me, he says to me, Peter, why are you so damn positive about the future? Don't you watch the news? And I said, President Clinton, actually, no, I don't watch the news. I'll talk about that in a moment. And I look at the data. So let me talk about the first. Guys, we're living in a world where the news media is a drug pusher. And negative news is their drug. Every device that we have, right, we're being bombarded, not by what you want to see, but what they want to program you to see. And so I call it the crisis news network, or the constantly negative news network. And I won't even talk about what Fox stands for. But you can guess what the F stands for there. But at the end of the day, evolutionarily, we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. And what's the news media's business model? To deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. That's how they make money. And so if you're paying 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news, right? And I'm not immune. I'm like that glued to the set when something is going on. It's how they trap you. So if you get a newspaper, I step over my newspapers, open it up and just look, count the number of positive articles to negative articles. It's 10 to 1 negative to positive. And I'm not saying it's not, true of what the news is about, but it's not balanced, right? There's no one standing outside Burbank Airport this morning going, no airplane crash here today, right? No one standing out the local Pasadena High School saying, no school shooting here today. So all you hear about is the negative shit over and over and over again in high definition on every device. And that is going to screw with your mind, right? Your mindset is one of your most important elements of your life. And if you're barraged by negative news, that's going to color how you think about the day, about the future, right? So there are other ways to get the news from your social groups, from Google News Alerts. Consider that. But let's look at the data. Over the last 100 years, the per capita income for every nation on this planet has more than tripled. The cost of food has plummeted 20, 30-fold, right? Amazon's about to cut the prices again in food. Energy's dropped 30 to 50-fold. Communications, thousands of fold. Transportation, thousands of fold. Communications, millions of fold cheaper. If you look at the data, it's extraordinary. This is the percentage of the world between 1820 and today going from extreme poverty of 95%. Right, it was the king and the queen on the hill and everybody else. Down to the point where we're about to eliminate extreme poverty on planet Earth in the next 15 to 20 years. This is global literacy. Yeah, give it up for that, huh? Literacy going from 15% close to 85%. We are right now at the X Prize. Elon Musk funded a $15 million prize backed by also Tony Robbins. And we had 700 teams around the world build a piece of Android software that could operate and take a child from illiteracy to reading, writing, and numeracy on their own, right? So, hold up 1 second. 700 teams, we narrowed it down to 5. Google gave us 8,000 tablets. We put the 5 finalists on these 8,000 tablets. These tablets are now in the hands of kids in Tanzania, and we're running an 18-month experiment to see which of those finalists are the best, and then we open source that, right? So that imagine creating 1 billion teachers per year on every Android device. That's scale. I love this. As a dad of 2 6-year-olds, I can not be more connected to this. 200 years ago, 45% of children under 5 died, right? It was a coin flip of whether your child survived. Today, it's 4%, still too high. It used to be dangerous to have a child. Maternal mortality rates have plummeted. This is average life expectancy. The average life expectancy for humanity has doubled. In fact, it's more than doubled compared to 100,000 years ago, where it was in the late 20s. And we're about to double it again. This is the number of children per family. In 1950s, 100 countries had 6 or more children per family. It's plummeting. Why? You do 2 things. You make a population healthier and better educated, and the number of children per family plummet. So my friends in the Valley are worried about underpopulation of planet Earth, not overpopulation. The orange line there is deaths from airplanes, the safest means of transportation, unless you're watching CNN show the crash over and over and over again. That blue line is car crashes, 1.25 million, which will go to 0 with autonomous cars. This is the death rate plummeting from natural catastrophes. Why? Because we have better sensors, better predictive models, satellites viewing the Earth from the skies. And this, from Steven Pinker, a friend of mine at Harvard, he wrote an amazing book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, which tells us we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history. Now, you wouldn't know that from watching the news, but your chance of dying a violent death are 1/500th of what they used to be. So the question is, why? Why now? It's truly the implications of the technologies we're creating. Exponential technologies take those things that used to be scarce and make them abundant over and over again. And so I work, all of my companies, all the entrepreneurs I work with, is how do you transform something scarce into abundance? Because it creates you wealth, right? I teach this. The world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Want to become a billionaire? Help 1 billion people. It's a beautiful situation. So if you'd like these slides, this will be up for the next hour or two. Just go to diamandis.com/bulletproof, enter your email, and you'll get these slides downloaded to you. Dave, are you there? You want to come back up stage? Where's Dave? There he is. Hey, pal. Thank you. Doubling. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on. And in 30 doublings, I'm not in the middle of the room here. In 30 doublings, I'm 1 billion meters away. Right? Put differently, I've gone 26 times around planet Earth. And that difference between 30 meters out or circumnavigating the planet 26 times is the challenge. And it's what can provide extraordinary opportunity to fuel your grandest moonshots. And Dave is right, I love working with entrepreneurs to say, go bigger, think bigger. You can. There is no limitation. There really is not. We're living in a world today where any one of you have access to the world's information on Google, right? More information than President Clinton had when he was the president. Any one of you can spin up 1,000 processor cores on AWS, on Amazon's web. Any one of you have access to as much capital. We're living in a world that is swimming in capital. Let's get going. My job in the next 30 minutes is to give you a sense of how fast the world is changing and how amazing the world is becoming. I want you to walk away here with the absolute confidence that you can make your biggest dreams come true, and that the world that we're creating is a world that is more prosperous, ultimately more peaceful, and ultimately the world that you desire for you and your kids. Right? I am so sick and tired of what I call the crisis news network, the constantly negative news network, this barrage of negative news that changes our mindset. So my goal here is a dosage of mindset for you to reset. You with me? Okay? All right. So here's the challenge. The 100 billion neurons in our brain, the 100 trillion synaptic connections in our brain, evolved on the savannas of Africa, hundreds of thousands. Seed, angel, venture, crowdfunding, even sovereign wealth funds are coming in and beginning to back entrepreneurs. So the question is, what's your limitation? And for me, what's typically the limitation of almost all entrepreneurs is A, you're not clear about what your massively transformative purpose is, which is what you wake up each day with as a mission and a purpose in life that allows you to decide, no, I'm not doing this, I'm going to focus on this. And then what's your moonshot? Where are you going 10 times bigger in your life, in your business, in your desires, while the rest of the world is going 10% bigger? Now, a lot of this exponential growth is fueled by what's called Moore's Law. This guy is Gordon Moore. He's one of the founders of Intel. And in 1958, he co-founds it. And by 1965, he notices something. He says, we've noticed at Intel that the number of transistors we can put on a piece of silicon has roughly doubled every 12 to 18 months. And he publishes these findings, but then is your choice. It's either disruptive opportunity, if you're willing to take advantage of these technologies and use them, or it's disruptive stress, if you're trying to be resistant. Listen, the only constant is change, and the rate of change is accelerating. So when I talk about exponentials, and this is a photograph of Singularity University, I'm proud to be the co-founder with Ray Kurzweil and the executive chairman. What does exponential growth mean? So all of us are linear thinkers. I can tell you in 5 steps I'll be there, in 20 there, in 30 I'll be at the cameraman in the middle of the room here. In 30 steps, I'm 30 meters away. And we, as humans, we think in this linear fashion. In fact, we tend to take the past and project it into the future. That's what we do. That's the way our brains are wired to think. But the world we're in today is an exponential one, where an exponential is a simple thousands and millions of years ago. And back then, the world was local and linear. And our brains evolved for this local and linear world, right? But today, the world is anything but that. Today, the world is global and exponential. Things are not changing millennium to millennium, or century to century, or decade to decade. They are changing year to year. And so if you were to graph that, it looks like this. This red line is all of us. It's our employees, our parents, our politicians, our friends, our customers. We have not had a hardware or software upgrade in 2 million years, literally, when our prefrontal cortex came into larger folds. This yellow line is the work that I do. I've had the pleasure of starting 19 companies really focused on exponential technologies. This is computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, blockchain, AR, VR, all of these technologies doubling in power every 12 to 24 months. And the difference between these two